Husband's been secretly meeting a woman he met online, planning to leave his old life behind, and before you picture some soap opera montage with suitcase zippers and a cab waiting outside, hear the way it actually unfolded for me, in the quiet between notifications, because I'm Lila, 32, a hospital radiographer who spends her days looking for fractures inside people and her nights convincing herself she can't possibly have missed the hairline crack forming inside her own life. And I'd love to tell you I was noble and calm when the first sign appeared, but the truth is it arrived as a glitch, a hiccup in the home Wi-Fi where a strange device popped up on the network list, a name I didn't recognize, a brand new phone linked as Orion, and yes, maybe lots of people name their phones after stars, but my husband has always been earthbound, practical shoes, sensible lunches, a man who chooses beige mugs on purpose, and seeing Orion blinking there felt like finding cologne on a sweater we don't own. I stared too long at that word, then closed the app like I'd put a lid on a jar with a bee inside, and I told myself to breathe and be decent and not go sniffing through drawers like a raccoon, but I'm trained to look past what is shown and into what is there, so I counted to 8 like I tell my anxious patients to do when the MRI coils feel too close, and I asked him casually, "Hey, did you get a new phone?" And he said, "Just an app update, which is not a kind of phone." And the middle of me slid half a centimeter to the left. If you're wondering what kind of marriage we had, I'll say warm and busy, the kind where you kiss in doorways, forget to defrost chicken, send each other memes about greyhounds doing human things, and sit on opposite ends of the couch some nights sharing silence like a bowl of chips. We're not dramatic people, we're steady, I thought, a word I used like a charm. Steady couples don't shatter, they just flex. And I believed that until the night I saw his smile reflected on a screen that wasn't facing me. He'd fallen asleep on the couch with his laptop open to a page called Wayfarer Exchange, which sounds like a forum for people who like boots, but it was a message board where usernames flirt in lowercase and strangers sign sentences with ellipses as if they're in the same room. His handle was Paper Harbor, a name so gentle it made my teeth hurt. A message blinked in the corner, "Tomorrow same spot," from someone called M. There was a photo thumbnail next to the letter. Just a hand holding a coffee cup, a scar on the knuckle, the kind of image that doesn't scream anything until your stomach hears it. I didn't click. I'm not proud or ashamed, I'm honest. I took a photo of the screen with my phone because I know how memory misbehaves when it's scared. Then I closed the laptop and shook his shoulder and said his name the way you say someone's name when you're checking if a dream has them hostage. He woke, smiled, and reached for me, and I felt like a person standing in the doorway of her own house listening for a window to break. I asked him if he wanted tea. He said yes, and I made it, and while the kettle muttered I looked at the magnets on our fridge, the one from the coastal town we never quite reached, the one with the cartoon cat that says, "I work hard so my cat can have a better life," which is tragic because we don't have a cat, and I thought of how writable we'd made our lives, how neat. At the hospital, I am good in emergencies. I'm the one who says, "Okay, let's do this." And people do because my voice chooses the right size of calm. But there's a particular terror in the domestic emergency you have to invent a code for. I didn't tell anyone at work because I didn't know what I was telling. Instead, I started to watch, not like a spy, more like a scientist who notices soil cracking and wonders if the plant is thirsty or dying. He began leaving earlier for his morning runs, he began wearing the nice deodorant on evenings we were just staying in, he began smiling at nothing, and I will tell you this, we always think we'll know the day our life tips, but it tips quietly, it tips while you're rinsing a bowl. 2 days after the same spot message, I had a late shift. He had the day off and texted me a photo of the dog park with the caption, "These two are soulmates," which would be adorable if we had a dog, but he meant the golden retriever he likes to pet on his loop, and I typed back "lucky them," then deleted it and wrote "so cute" because fear is so polite. When my shift ended, I didn't head straight home. I drove to the canal, the place he goes when his head's too loud, because the message had lodged in me, and the canal's cafe had a mural of a woman reading in a boat that shows up in everyone's navel-gazing photos. I parked where I could see without being seen, which is a sentence I wish I didn't know how to write, and I told myself I was ridiculous, but then his jacket appeared, the one with the elbow patches, the one I bought on sale, and he pretended wasn't the nicest thing he owned, and beside him was a woman in a green coat with a bicycle helmet looped through her bag strap. She looked like a person who belongs to herself. They hugged like people who didn't want to be noticed hugging. And then they walked along the canal, the long easy pace of two people who have already had the conversation. I will not transcribe my heartbeat for you, it was loud and it was mine and it didn't kill me. I watched them talk with their hands. He tucked hair behind her ear once, then remembered himself and put both hands in his pockets. They stopped at the mural and she took a photo of him and he put his hands down and he smiled the smile I love, the one that looks like he's apologizing for existing and also grateful he gets to. I left before they kissed because I don't know if they did and I didn't want a yes or a no to become the only word in my mouth. Instead, I drove to a car wash and sat in the Suds tunnel and let the brushes thump their big blue forgiveness against the windows. I turned off the radio and I said out loud, "My name is Lila, I am 32, I know how to tell the truth even to myself." He got home before me somehow and had set the table. He'd made pasta, there was basil, which he hates buying and only gets when he wants points. He told me about an article he read on cities designed for birds. I told him about a patient who brought his own blanket to the scanner because the hospital ones make him feel like a ghost. We were wonderful. I almost admired us, the way you admire a con pulled off without a dropped bead. Later in bed he turned to me and touched my knee with his knuckles, the soft way he does when he's trying to be both careful and brave, and I could have started a fight. What a relief that would have been, a contained explosion with a clear cleanup. But instead I said I love you because it was true and also because love felt like a bargaining chip I didn't want to lay on the table yet. He said it back. He fell asleep fast, always has. I lay there watching the ceiling fan carve slow circles out of the air, and I thought about that woman in the mural, the one in the boat, how she's always reading the same page no matter how many times the world paints her. The next morning I used my hospital brain on my house. I made a list like a triage nurse. What do I need to know to proceed safely? Is he in love? Is he in lust? Is he practicing a vanishing act he plans to perfect later with suitcases and a note? I did not go through his phone. I've seen too many people bleed from cuts they gave themselves. But I did open our shared calendar and the family cloud drive, places that are meant to be mutual, and I found a new folder called Meadow. Inside, a spreadsheet with numbers that could be a budget, a map with dots along the coast, an Airbnb wish list named Anywhere with Light. The Notes app had a line that made my throat tighten. Old life like a heavy coat on a warm day, time to set it down. It was written in his style, the dash, the space. He had been thinking in metaphors without me. Let me tell you about secrets. They don't start as monsters, they start as permissions. He'd given himself permission to take off the coat. He'd given himself permission to walk around a canal with a woman who names her helmet. He'd given himself permission to name a folder Meadow like he'd move into a word and grow grass. The next permission is usually the one with a lease. I scrolled farther. A saved message, draft address to M. It said, ticket booked. End of the month. Reclamation, not escape. The word reclamation made me want to break a plate. How elegant to recast abandonment as a spiritual practice. How handsome to leave the mess and call it courage. I didn't throw a plate. I threw up quietly, and then I washed my face and went to work because radiographers still need to image shoulders even when their marriages are making art without them. At lunch, I texted my sister, June. I wrote, "Do you have 20 minutes tonight?" She called immediately, of course she did. She's the kind of sister who keeps her ring light set up because sometimes life wants you on camera. I told her half, then more, then all. She swore expertly. She said, "Do you want to catch him or keep him?" I laughed because the truth in that question made my bones reset. "I want the truth in the room," I said. "Then you want a plan," she said. "Not the dramatic kind. The honest kind. I'll come over. We'll write your script." That evening, she sat at my kitchen island with her laptop like a benevolent prosecutor. We made a list of facts I had seen with my actual eyes. We did not include suspicions. We wrote an opening line that didn't let him run for the moral high ground. I saw you with M. I saw the folder called Meadow. I saw the note about end of the month. We made rules, no yelling, no sarcasm, my superpower when scared. No kitchen knives on the bench top, we laughed but removed them anyway. No future telling, no bargaining with ghosts. We set a time, Sunday morning, when the likelihood of him disappearing into errands would be statistically lower and I'd have daylight. We made tea. We hugged like people who know the cost of a body standing upright. Before Sunday, I went to meet M. It wasn't the plan. It wasn't dignified. It was the thing I did because my breath wanted it. The platform gave me a clue. The Wayfarer Exchange had a public meetup notice posted under a subpage titled Walk and Words. Saturdays, the canal, the mural, a blue scarf to identify. It was reckless and I wore caution like a thin jacket, but I also wore my hospital badge on a lanyard tucked into my shirt, a superstition that makes me feel like I cannot be entirely erased while carrying my name. I arrived early. I wore my own scarf, green, and I watched people gather, older men with thin notebooks, teenagers with tote bags, two women debating a poem about a river as if the river might arrive to defend itself. And then there she was, the green coat again, blue scarf now. She wasn't dazzling, she was alive in her skin, which is sometimes rarer. She sat on the step near the mural and took out an apple. I sat 2 steps away. I said, "Do you ever think the woman in the boat is bored?" She smiled at the mural like it had a mouth. "I think she keeps that page open on purpose," she said. "Like a window you can't see through but can feel the air from." We were 2 people in a public place talking about paint while a private fire ate through all my oxygen tanks. She looked at me then like the way some people look when they sense a storm and don't know whether to bring in the laundry. "Have we met?" she asked. "Not officially," I said, and my voice remembered how to be kind and surgical. "My husband is Paper Harbor." Her face went still, not guilt like TV, more like grief realizing it's early to the party. She put the apple down. She said, "Oh." For a moment I wanted her to be monstrous so I could be a heroine, but she was a person and that is always more complicated. "I didn't know he was married," she said, and I let the sentence land. "He didn't wear a ring," she added. "He doesn't when he runs. He doesn't when he wants to be a man without a history." I nodded. "I thought we were doing something brave and stupid," she said, "like building a raft. I didn't think we were sinking someone else's boat." People say pretty things when they're scared. But I believed her because she didn't defend herself with adjectives or him with philosophy. She asked, "What do you want me to do?" And I said quietly, "Step away before you become the reason he doesn't learn anything." She nodded. "Okay," she said. She looked like someone closing the book gently on their hand. "I'll tell him to fix his own life without me." I walked home through streets that didn't know me and I felt like a saint and a fool and a woman who had done something both necessary and melodramatic. At home, I showered for a very long time. The water did its water thing. I rehearsed my Sunday conversation, then I stopped rehearsing because I wanted to arrive as a person, not an actor. I slept like a dog who finally dropped the stick. Sunday morning, the light in our kitchen made even the fruit bowl look like it had been staged. He came in from his run damp and pink-cheeked. I poured coffee into the beige mug he loves. I took the green one for myself as if color could hold me. Then I said, "I know about M." He looked up so fast his neck might someday remember it. I kept speaking before he could build any bridges with disclaimers. "I saw you together by the canal. I saw meadow. I saw end of the month. I need the truth in this room today." He opened his mouth, then closed it, then set the mug down with a small clink like punctuation. He didn't ask how I knew. He didn't perform outrage about privacy. He Saturday, "I wasn't going to do it like a thief," he said, which I think he meant as comfort. "You were going to do it like a poet?" I asked, because my sarcasm engine coughed to life. He flinched, and then he did a thing I can forgive. He told me the truth like it had weight. Yes, he'd met her online on a forum about walking and essays because of course that exists. Yes, he felt seen in the way people feel seen when someone listens to their sentences with both hands. Yes, he'd been planning to leave at the end of the month, not in the night but with a talk he promised himself he'd have, a talk that was always 3 days away. Yes, he was convinced it was reclamation, not escape. I told him reclaiming is for things that already belong to you. You don't get to reclaim your life by stealing time someone else invested in it. We spoke for 3 hours and it felt like we were both trying to thread a needle with cold fingers. He said he'd been feeling like a ghost in his own house, which is an accusation that can be true even if the haunted thing isn't me. I told him I'd been feeling like the furniture that makes a room look finished even when no one sits down. He said words about change and lightness, I said words about vows and sweat and the kind of love that requires choosing the same person on purpose when the movie stops being good. He cried. I cried in the way I didn't want to, not messy, but the kind where your throat shakes like a trapped drawer. Then I put the options on the table like instruments. We separate now with dignity I will fight to maintain, or we press pause on catastrophe and go to therapy like our hair is on fire. If he stayed, it would be here, fully, with transparency that isn't performative but practical. No secret devices named after stars, no meetups in the geography of pretend, no folders that sound like fields you can run through. He nodded too fast, the nod of a man desperate to gather what he just threw into the wind. I told him he also needed to write to M. He said he would. He asked if I wanted to see it. I said yes, and I hated myself a little and also not at all, because trust needs scaffolding before it becomes a bridge again. He wrote while I washed dishes we had not used. He wrote, I told Lila the truth. I need to do the work. I am ending this. I'm sorry. He sent it. He showed me a reply a few minutes later that read, Fix your life. Don't make me your lesson plan. I laughed, hard, ugly, because I liked her steal and because sometimes the only relief in hell is someone else's sentence that rings. He called his mother. He told her we were in trouble. He called his best friend, the one who knows our anniversary and his cholesterol. He made appointments with 2 therapists because it takes time to find the person you can bleed on without them fainting. He offered to sleep on the couch. I let him, not as punishment, though part of me wanted the ritual of distance, but because I wanted my bed to be my bed until I decided otherwise. The next weeks were a study in civilian courage. We moved through the house like careful roommates. We sat in a room with a woman who asked us to say our names and then the words we were afraid of most. He said ordinary, I said abandoned. She asked us to trace the geography of how we got here without using the words always or never. We made maps full of cul-de-sacs and shortcuts and that one wrong turn you take because the trees on the other road look more interesting. She asked him to describe the version of himself he was building with M. He said lighter, listened to, braver. She asked him to describe the version of me he told himself I had become. He said busy, unimpressed, safe. I said tired, and the word sat between us and wagged its tail like it had finally been fed. At home, we made rules we posted on the fridge like we were 2 teenagers in trouble with our parents. Daily check-in after dinner where we say 3 true things. No phones in the bedroom for 60 days. If either of us feels the urge to hide, we say out loud, I want to hide, and then we both sit in the kitchen until the feeling passes or teaches us something. I added a silly rule that wasn't silly. We walk somewhere every Sunday morning without headphones and we name every dog we see, even if the dog is actually a pigeon. We needed new rituals that didn't taste like ash. Do you want a clean arc? I don't have it. Some days were exquisite. He'd look at me like I was a country he thought he'd lost the map to and just found it behind a cupboard, would eat toast and talk about a book as if we invented conversation. Some days I wanted to throw his beige mug at the wall and then hand him a broom in a lecture. I used a phrase I learned at work, both things can be true. I loved him and he'd made a plan to ghost me politely. I wanted us, and I wanted not to be a woman who ignores the fire alarm because the fire is pretty. One evening, after therapy, he brought home a printout of a rental listing for a studio apartment nearby. He put it on the table like an organ donor form. If you say the word, he said, I'll move out for 6 months and do the work from there. I'll pay my share. I'll show up when you ask. I'll go. The part of me that wanted punishment hummed. The part of me that wanted healing said, not yet. I told him the studio could be a boundary later. Right now the boundary was honesty with edges on it. He cried again, in that way men do when they have used up all their attractive sadness and are left with the real kind. I sat beside him on the floor and we leaned against the couch like we were 22 and broke and inventing dinner out of rice. June kept calling. She brought over a ridiculous houseplant with leaves like spatulas and told me to yell at the plant when the urge hit to yell at him. I did, and I assure you the plant has heard words that would curl your toes. I joined a forum for people whose partners tried to start new lives without informally canceling the old one. Most posts were sharp and clean with rage. I read them like medicine and also like a warning label. may cause bitterness if taken indefinitely. I cooked some meals that tasted like hope and some that tasted like regret. He washed dishes like an apology. We became, in that strange middle period, a kind of team again, two people building a raft out of the furniture of their house, slowly naming each piece as they lash it down. I ran into him once more months later in a grocery store aisle where olives go to feel important. She looked well. Not radiant, real. We looked at the same jar like it could referee. She touched my elbow lightly and said, "I hope you okay." I said, "I'm building something," and she nodded like she recognized the blueprints. She said, "I stopped going to the canal," and I said, "Me too," and we both smiled at nothing, and I went home with the wrong olives and told him, and he said, "Do you want to talk about it?" And we did for 10 minutes. Then we watched a silly show about people creating glass sculptures, and when one shattered we gasped like children and then laughed at ourselves, and then we went to bed and he reached for my hand and I let him, and somewhere a small, stubborn part of me stood on the balcony of my own chest and looked out and said, "Yes, for now." If you want to know whether he still plans to leave, I don't read his mind. I ask his mouth and watch his feet. His mouth says, "I'm here." His feet come home. He deleted the forum accounts, not as theater but as a person closing a door and putting the key in my hand, which I didn't want, but I kept for a while anyway because old instincts die with ceremony. He wears his ring everywhere, even on runs, even when it annoys him. He still looks at light like it's a language, but now he talks to me in it. He still names folders, but now they're boring names like groceries and April, and the one I made called Dogs We Saw, filled with blurry joy. When the urge to name a folder meadow comes, he says it out loud and we go stand on actual grass instead. I know I could have left. I want her, the version of me who left, to know I admire her. I want this me, the one who stayed with boundaries like railings, to know I admire her too. We are both real. Both brave. If you are where I was, if your home Wi-Fi blinks Orion at you, if your body knows before your brain signs the receipt, please hear me. You are not crazy, you are noticing. Bring the truth into a room with daylight. Write yourself a script. Bring a sister or a friend who holds a flashlight steady. Use words like "I saw" and "I need." Refuse to let someone call theft a reclamation. Know that love is not the opposite of dignity. Know that whatever you choose, stay, go, wait, burn, deserves to be chosen with your eyes open and your name intact. Last Sunday, we went for our walk. We passed a couple taking a picture by the canal mural, and for the first time in a long time I didn't feel like I was in their photograph without consent. We named 3 dogs, Wolfgang, Noodle, and Mrs. Button, though Mrs. Button was definitely a pigeon. We bought 2 pastries from the bakery where the woman writes little jokes on paper bags. Ours said, "Start fresh?" Sure. But finish what you start. At home, he put the kettle on. I opened the window. The house smelled like rain deciding whether to show up. He handed me the beige mug and I didn't hate it. We sat and we didn't perform. He said, "Do you want to talk about anything hard?" And I said, "Not today," and he nodded like a person who has learned that not today isn't a betrayal, it's a plan. Then we ate our pastries and made a grocery list that included olives we both pretended to like and dog treats we do not need, and he kissed my temple and I leaned into him, and it wasn't redemption, it was Tuesday, which is to say, it was ours.